right, so this is going to be the full CARS routine. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to perform my upper extremity and lower extremity on one side so that the video is a little bit shorter. And there are a couple rules with CARS that we want to make apparent right off the bat. Number one is that CARS should always be pain-free. So if there is any pain experienced, such as a sharp pinching or shooting during the CAR, we simply back off away from whatever direction causes pain to ensure that it is pain-free. And number two, our goal is to isolate that specific joint or that region of the spine. So if I was doing my wrist CAR, I would want to not move anything above or below that joint in order to get better at controlling my wrist by itself. We're going to start at the neck and work our way down. So for the neck CARs, the most common mistakes here are going to be movement of the shoulders and the thoracic spine. So we have two arm position options we're going to start off with for this one. Number one is making fists, reaching them down towards the ground. Also like to imagine that there's some wet sponges in my armpits and I want to give a gentle squeeze on that, but I have more tension down than in. I'll maintain that tension as I begin my neck CAR. And my goal is to control every bit of the range of motion, so I don't want to rush through those portions that seem easy to move through. So I'm going to very slowly flex my neck. My chin goes down towards my chest. Once I get to the end range here, I'm going to lead with my chin, rotate over towards one shoulder. As I make my way up to the shoulder here, there's a couple ways to think about this position. Number one is as if you're checking your blind spot, but without this other shoulder coming forward. And number two, you can also think about trying to touch the chin to the top of your shoulder. Once we max out the rotation there, we're going to draw a semicircle up and across towards our opposite shoulder, coming down to the same position on this side, going towards the collarbone and shoulder, making my way back down. From here, I can reverse my circle, following that same path that I did on the other side, and make my way back down. That is one complete rep for the neck CAR. The second other arm position for this one is going to be to interlock the fingers, reach back and down so I can maintain this arm position while performing that as well. Next, we'll get into the thoracic spine CARs. For this one, in order to best isolate our thoracic spine, we have to make sure that at the line of the pelvis and below, we're not moving. So I'm going to imagine that I'm trying to pitch a coin between my cheeks to keep that very, very tight, and also pull my kneecaps up to tense my quads. I'm going to give myself a little hug here. From here, I'm going to maintain the tension in my butt and my quads, very slowly flex forward, as if trying to peel my spine away from an imaginary wall behind me. Once I max out my flexion here, I'm then going to rotate towards one side, staying in flexion. Once I max out the rotation here, I'm going to do a very subtle side bend. So I feel all this stuff on this side engaging, all of this is opening up. Once I max out the side bend, I'm going to extend, staying rotated towards that side. Once I max out the extension here, I'm going to slowly pivot and rotate across. Once I max out the rotation and extension here, I'm then going to side bend, flex forward, and rotate back. And then I'll follow that same path back. Rotation, side bend, extend, rotate across, side bend, and flex back down. Show you one more from the side here. Flex, rotate, side bend, extend while maintaining rotation to that side, rotate across, side bend, flex, rotate back, rotation, side bend, extend, rotate across, side bend, flex, and rotate back to the middle. That's our thoracic spine CAR. Next, we'll get into the shoulder blade. With the shoulder blade, I like to pretend that I have a marker poking out from the top of my shoulder here, and I'm imagining trying to draw as big of a circle with that imaginary marker. Now with my arm here, this is the base position we're going to be performing this in. It can be performed in many other positions, but for this one, we're going to imagine that our arm is on a track, only allowed to go up and down, and our arm has to stay fully extended here. From here, I'm going to shrug my shoulder up as high as I can, so now I'm on that top point of my circle here with that imaginary marker pointing out. I'm then going to begin drawing my circle up and forward, down and forward, down and back, and up and back, and then complete my circle there. I'll show you again in the same direction, up and forward, down and forward, down and back, up and back. And we want to do these circles in both directions, just like the other cars so far. Go up and back, down and back, down and forward, up and forward, and back to my starting point. All right, next we'll jump into the shoulder here. We're going to start off with capsular cars. For the capsular cars, I'm just isolating the rotational component of the shoulder. I'm going to keep my arm fully extended and try not to rotate here at the forearm or my wrist. I'm going to maintain that neutral position here. I like to imagine I'm trying to rotate the back of my elbow forward, because when I do that, I have none of that rotation occur here at my forearm. So going back is to external rotation when the front of the elbow points forward, and then internal rotation is when you're trying to point the back of the elbow towards the front of your body. And I can perform these shoulder capsular cars in any position. I hold my arm out to the side and perform these. I can be back here. So any position that is pain-free, we can perform these in. Now for the full shoulder car, we're gonna maintain isolation of that joint by really tensing up our abdominals. So I'm gonna keep my opposite hand that I'm not using here on the bottom of my rib cage here to feel for any movement. That's gonna give you a lot of good feedback as far as if you're accidentally extending your spine or if you're rotating. Because if the thoracic spine moves, typically the rib cage will move with that as well. So I'm gonna start with a nice exhale. Feel my ribs drop down and in, maintain that throughout. Engage my glutes and pull my kneecaps up. I'm going to very slowly flex my shoulder. Once I get to the top position here, I'm going to pause. This is what I call roadblock number one. At this roadblock, we're going to internally rotate, just like we did with the capsular cars. We're going to rotate as much as we can at this position. Once I've maxed out the rotation, I'm going to proceed past the imaginary roadblock. And as soon as I move past, I'm increasing rotation in the same direction. Again, drawing as big of a circle as I can as I move throughout that range of motion. Show you again in the same direction. I slowly flex. Pause when I get to that first roadblock. Internally rotate. Continue past the roadblock, maximizing the internal rotation along the way. Once I complete that circle, I can do the reverse. I'll go straight back into shoulder extension. Common mistake here would be to lean forward or to go out to the side. We want to ensure that we are going straight back here into roadblock number two. Once we hit that second roadblock, we're then going to externally rotate the shoulder and follow that same circle all the way back up. This time I'm just now focusing on the opposite direction of rotation, so that palm ends up facing up on my way down. Show you that one again. For the reverse, straight back, externally rotate, draw that nice big circle all the way through until we reach the bottom here. And that's the full shoulder car. Next we'll get into the elbow cars. So for elbow cars, we want to, our base position is going to be at our side. We want to keep that arm there so that the shoulder isn't moving during this car. I'm going to slowly flex my elbow. I'm going to give my bicep a little squeeze at the top here. Slowly rotate so that my palm is facing away. Come back down. And once I get to the bottom here, I'm then going to rotate my forearm again. The palm is facing towards me. As I flex back up, squeeze the bicep, rotate, slowly extend back down. From here, I'm going to reverse that circle. So I'm going to keep my forearm rotated in that direction. Pause at the top again, squeeze the bicep, slowly rotate, extend back down. And the common mistake there is rushing that rotation. So make sure at those end ranges that you're not trying to go too quick with that. Go nice and slow, really controlling that rotation. Next, we'll get into the wrist car. For the wrist, we have much more range of motion deviating towards the midline of the body here versus going out and away. So we already know off the bat that our circle is going to favor the inside quite a bit. I'm gonna start off in wrist flexion here, maintaining karate chop hand. I'm gonna slowly flex the wrist as much as I can here. Once I maximize the wrist flexion, I'm then going to go towards the inside. And while doing that, I'm maintaining that pressure towards my body. Once I maximize that position without rotating my forearm here, I'm then going to extend my wrist while maintaining towards the inside of my imaginary circle. Once I maximize that, I'm going to extend my wrist and deviate towards the outside as I make my way back up towards that first step, which was that neutral flexion here. Another tip that you can do for this exercise is to go ahead and throw a quarter on your forearm here and try to balance that to ensure that you're not rotating that forearm during the exercise. We want to do these in both directions, so I start off in flexion again, deviate towards the outside, make my way back down. All right, next we're going to get into the hip. With the hip car, we'll start off with capsular cars, just like we did for the shoulder. For this one, if you are doing standing, you want to definitely have a good base of support. So I'll put one hand on the wall in order to make sure that I'm not trying to balance back and forth there. I'm going to slowly flex my hip up to 90 degrees. This will be our base position for the hip capsular car. I'm going to imagine that there's a pole going through the front of my knee, all the way through out the back of my hip, and I'm only allowed to rotate around that imaginary pole. So just like we isolated rotation with the shoulder joint, we're going to do the same thing here with our hip. So I'll place my finger here as that imaginary pole going through my hip. I'm going to squeeze my quad and butt on the stance leg here. I'm going to slowly externally rotate my hip as far as I can, one direction, and slowly internally rotate the other. And as I progress into further range of motion here, I'm trying to push into that barrier. And another way I like to think about this is imagining trying to draw a smiley face with my big toe as I rotate back and forth. And as I get more and more reps here, I'm trying to make my smiley face bigger and bigger with each rep. All right, that's the base position for the hip capsular car. Now we'll get into the full hip car. For this one, we want the same thing with our stance leg. Engage the quadricep, squeeze the butt on that side as well, so all this is really tight in order to prevent movement from other joints. I'll have a good base of support on the wall here. I'm going to also exhale to start my reps. Get some coffee first. So I'll get that nice exhale in, engage my butt, my quad, slowly flex my hip. And again, I'm trying to maximize the entire range of motion here. So as I proceed through, I'm constantly questioning myself if I am doing a good job of one, isolating, and two, maximizing that range of motion. Once I maximize my hip flexion, I'm then going to go to open book position. So here, I have to make sure that I'm not turning my whole pelvis. I'm just opening my hip here. Once I get to this open book position, I'm maximizing my pressure out and up. I'm then going to internally rotate my hip as much as I can, not going back yet. I want to make sure that I maximize the rotation before going back to the next step. So once I get to that open book and internally rotate, I'm then going to push back into hip extension. So here I'm really driving my heel and butt back so that I feel this guy going pretty good. Also while trying to maintain maximal distance between my knees. I don't want to let it drop down towards my other knee during that portion. So I'll maximize that position as I press back, keeping my abs engaged so as not to lean forward. From here, I'm going to keep that pressure back and slowly bring my knee down towards my other knee. And as I bring that hip down there, I'm trying to maintain that pressure directly back the entire time to maximize the hip extension. So you get in the same direction, hip flexion, open book, internally rotate, extend back, maintain extension as we go down. And then for the reverse, we just go the opposite direction here. I'm going to go straight back, out and together, go towards open book. And this time I'm going to add in more external rotation as I return back towards that first step, slowly lower back down. So Show you again in this position. I'm gonna flex, open book, internally rotate, extend back, all the way through, then the reverse, extend back, open together, go into external rotation as we come across. All right, and we'll get to the knee and ankle here. For those ones, I like to be on the ground. In order to best isolate the knee joint here, I'm gonna do two things. One is I'm gonna secure my femur to my chest, so I'm gonna put it in a little bit of a headlock here by grabbing underneath, grabbing onto the elbow, throwing that hand on top. Then I'm also going to pull my toes up towards my knee in order to make sure my ankle stays locked. For this one, I'm really paying attention also to the outside and inside of my ankle. If I feel any tension changing on there, meaning tightness on one side, a stretch on the other, that's gonna let me know that I'm likely moving from my ankle instead of only my knee joint. All right, so once I get everything set there, I'm gonna pull my foot off the ground a little bit so that I can maximize that knee flexion here. And when I do that, I'm definitely trying to squeeze my forearm against my body so that I feel my hamstrings. I'm then going to slowly externally rotate my knee, extend up as high as I can here, pause, internally rotate, and slowly flex back down. At the bottom here, I'm going to squeeze my forearm again, pause, externally rotate, extend up, internally rotate, and come back down. From here, I can reverse my circle. I'll slowly extend up while maintaining internal rotation, externally rotate, and flex back down, giving myself a squeeze at the bottom on my forearm, up, externally rotate, and come back down. Last but not least, we're going to jump into the ankle car here. As we proceed with the ankle car, I'm now worried about knee rotation occurring during this one, so I have to place one hand on the front of my knee and kind of keep my eyes there a little bit in order to make sure that I'm not rotating here at the knee joint. From here, I'm going to pull my toes up towards my knee. I'm then going to maintain that pressure up towards my knee as I go to the inside. While maintaining pressure to the inside, I'll slowly bring my foot down and in. Once I maximize the down and in position, I'm going to draw my circle to the outside. During this portion, I really feel the tension on the outside of my leg here, so you should be feeling that as we go to the outside here. Slowly extend back up while maintaining that pressure to the outside. Make sure you get in that same direction. Up and in, down and in, down and out, up and out. And we want to do these circles in both directions. Cool, and that is the full ankle car. For more details on all the cars, definitely check out my channel. If there's not specific cars posted on there, they'll be up there very soon. Thank you.